Let's maul in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's bog in the Central Committee right now.
All right, chat. Are you ready for me? I kind of want to have a mauled. You want a mauled? Let's mauled. Let's mauled.
But there is another recent New York mayoral race that also has gotten people's attention. In Buffalo, self-proclaimed Democratic socialist India Walton defeated incumbent mayor Byron Brown last week in the city's Democratic primary. Writer and journalist Matthew Yglesias wrote this about that race. Not as covered as the NYC race, but socialists scored a big win in Buffalo where only 20,000 people voted. It cuts against their official narrative, but the left's true strength is low turnout, low salience races. And Matthew joins us now. Also joining us, co-CEO and founder of the data and analytics company Applecart, Sasha Samuelson, back with us, and NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent.
Hey, I must have missed it. Where's the leftist on this panel to push back? Where's the both sides? I thought this was a both sides network over there on MSNBC. I thought they were balanced. Wait, what?
And the host of Way Too Early, Casey Hunt, joins us as well. Good to have you all on board.
Great to have you on. You know, so Matt, I remember when somebody named AOC won a summer primary over a member of Democratic leadership. It should have never happened. I forget, the vote tally was remarkably low. And yet she has moved on to become really one of the rising stars in American politics, and certainly the rising star of the American left.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, something I think we've seen is traditionally in New York in particular, you have a strong Democratic Party machine, and they thought of these low turnout elections as strengthening the establishment. But in today's politics, you know, one of the big things the Democratic Socialists, the left of the party has going for them is they are very engaged. Their candidates raise a lot of small dollar donations. We had this race in Buffalo, a couple of down ballot races in New York City where they did very well. There was a race for St. Louis mayor a few weeks ago where you had a similar result. These are the people in the Democratic coalition who pay the most attention to politics. And when you have elections that kind of fly below the radar, that's where the left tends to do quite well.
Yeah, and obviously, if I were running a base campaign on the right, fewer voters, the better, because, you know, one of the reasons I got elected is I micro-targeted the people that I knew were going to come out and vote in primaries every 2 years.
So in other words, when the machine does it, that's normal politics. When the left does it, they're cheating because they're not really representative of the people, and they're doing some sort of, it's not really, they're beating us at our own game. Oh, no. They went and talked to the people that voted, and they won the vote. Well, but, wait, that doesn't count because there's low turnout. You designed the system to be low turnout so your machine politicians could win. Now we should rechange the system so that it helps the establishment win. Whatever the establishment needs to win is the system we should use. And here is Republican representative Joe Scarborough's television show on MSNBC describing how that's how he won his primary, by doing the exact same shit.
While my opponents were shaking hands at state fairs, I was knocking on those specific doors. And it is that narrow casting, that narrow focusing, Matt, that helps more ideological candidates on the right or the left win elections.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. You know, the most ideological people care the most about politics, right? They participate the most. And you've seen that as Democrats.
By the way, I've said this before on my channel, chat, which is about 10% of people are ideological, and a bunch of people have eclectic, random-ass, grab-astic opinions. They operate on a kindergarten morality. They don't spend a lot of time thinking about stuff. I'm sorry, but the average person doesn't. They're too busy trying to survive. So those of us who are ideological, those of us who are organized, we go out there and we try to spread a message based on what we think is the right thing. Now, I'm a leftist, so I focus on increasing power, spreading power, increasing equality, empirically, what makes people's lives better? How do we make everything good for the average person, the greatest number? So when I go and talk to someone, my politics are in line with what they need. And when I talk to them and they listen to the policies and they listen to what I say, they agree, which is why the polls come back with the average person, the vast majority of the country supports leftist policy. Now, they're not leftist activists, but they agree with the policies and the policies would benefit them. So empirically, the policies are good. Democratically, they're supported by the vast majority of people. So whether or not people are dedicated, dyed-in-the-wool, ideological machines is unimportant to me.
Have picked up sort of more highly educated voters. They've started doing better in like strangely timed special elections. Traditionally, Democratic voters haven't turned out in midterms, but I think that disadvantage may have gone away to some extent. But also state parties should think about when they time their primaries. I mean, the New York State Democrats are very cynical. These weirdly off-year elections are not a coincidence, but it was supposed to sort of bolster establishment candidates against reformers. But today, I think it really has the opposite result. It's empowering sort of far left groups that I think the party mostly doesn't want to win.
Yeah, and when you have an off
the party, meaning the establishment, the professional Democrats, don't want to win. Not the voters. The party, meaning the professional Democrats, the corrupt people, the lobbyist sellouts.
Off-year election primary in the middle of summer, you are begging for a small turnout. So, Sasha, take us through the numbers. How does this work? How do we have some of our most high-profile candidates, some of our most high-profile political figures coming from primaries where they win very few votes?
Well, the answer in D.C., at least, is because 90% of seats in Congress are safe. So it really is the primary that is determinative of the outcome and who ultimately gets elected. Take AOC's seat, for example. She won 75% of the vote in her 2018 general election, which was the first time she was on a general election ballot. Despite that, she won her primary with 16,000 votes in total. She was in the race for about 400 days. That meant she spoke to a couple dozen people a day and convinced them to vote for her. And that's an impressive feat. It takes a lot of work to do that on the ground. But it's still not a particularly large number of people compared to a congressional district with 700,000 plus residents.
Well, and that works on all sides. It works on the Republican side I was talking about.
It works on the centrist side, too. They can knock on doors and talk to those people. This is just them complaining that the left was working harder because they have more grassroots? This is pointless.
In my case, when I ran as a almost libertarian small government conservative in a district that hadn't elected Republicans since like the 1870s. But you now have some Trump acolytes who are also getting to Congress this way, some with some extreme views.
That's right. If you look for...
Well, she got 75% of the vote in the general election, so I guess she has a pretty good mandate then.
Example at MTG, at the primary that originally produced her. You know, this is another case where the rules of the election made a big difference. You know, in New York, AOC's primary was on a totally different day than the state and local primaries for your Democratic office holders. For MTG in Georgia, she had a primary, and then a few weeks later, there was a runoff between her and a second candidate. The crazy thing is, despite winning her general election nearly 75% to 25%, the Democrat in that general election won more votes than were cast for MTG in her primary in total, despite being a very Republican seat.
So, Matt Yglesias, what is the implication for Democratic leaders in Washington of what's going on here? I mean, I can't help but think back to 2010 and the Tea Party when there were Republican leaders, especially on the House side, who just weren't really paying attention and who ended up with a lot of candidates that caused a lot of trouble when they then turned around and tried to actually govern the country when they...
What? That's just deluded. They did exactly what they wanted to do. What? They defeated Obama and made him a fucking lame duck for 6 years. What are they talking about?
They were in charge, and Nancy Pelosi, the current House Speaker, has done a little bit of a better job at keeping her progressive flank in the fold. It sounds like that's about to get harder. What should their strategy be?
I mean, you're definitely seeing this difficulty around the infrastructure bill, right, where, Nancy Pelosi is trying to appease the more left members of her caucus. It's creating problems for Joe Biden. The one advantage that I do think
What are you talking about? Republicans are voting for a fucking infrastructure bill, dummy! He's not getting 10 Republicans. It's not happening. There's no problems being created. You're deluded. They're wasting time. The Republicans are running out the clock, and then they're going to vote no. This is part of what I wanted to show you, chat. I wanted to show you this. This is the congressional calendar. This is something that no other fucking person who actually covers politics is going to show you because they don't know how it actually works. July 6th is today. Quote, district work period. What does that mean? That means every representative is on vacation. They're at home. All right? They're in their district, which means they chill out and do whatever events they want to do in their local community, right? District work period. So that means they're not passing any laws. No votes are happening in Congress, okay? That's for the rest of this week. Next week, they're going to be back in D.C. working on committee votes and committee work. Also mostly on vacation. It isn't until the 19th of this month that they're going to start to have votes at 6:30 p.m. 3 day, till 6:30 p.m. on Monday, they're going to start doing votes. Then they're going to have a 4-day work week. 4-day work week. Then they have Friday off. They have a 3-day weekend at the end of July. And then the last week of July, chat, is the last week they have to work in Congress on votes until when? September 17th. They will not be voting on any laws until September 17th. This is July. This is August. They're not voting on a single bill the entire month of August. There's Labor Day. And then we're now into September. The first vote, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was the 20th of September. I thought it was the 17th. I'm incorrect. They're not going to be voting again until 6:30 p.m. September 20th. So after they waste another they have 9 days. 9 days of work, but they're actually, 2 of them are no votes after 6:30. So they really have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.25, 7.5 real working days left for the rest of the summer. So this whole, the Democrats, we got to work across the aisle. The Republicans are just burning the time. They're burning the time. 7 more days of work for Congress passing laws. So when I flip out and I say, we have to do HR 1 now, we're running out of time, we can't fuck around, stop doing bipartisanship, this is the reason. They do 2 weeks in September. There is October. And then in December, they're off. They're off. And this is January 2020, so we don't know. They haven't made the calendar for next year yet. They're going to do fucking nothing. Sometimes I get down on myself about my productivity at work, and then I think of Joe Biden in Congress and realize that I produce more work product in a month than they do in an entire fucking decade. The centrists think they deserve to win because they played the game of deference to power. It feels illegitimate to them that anyone more ideologically driven outwork them and beat them in part because their ideology is that they are winners because they worked hard to get there. The mentality is a reflection of their belief in meritocracy, which allows them to continue to sell poor down the river and still think the status quo is acceptable. Great point, abominable bro man. The establishment is afraid of me becoming mayor because finally someone is going to lead with care, compassion, accessibility, transparency, and put people first. This is what Bernie Sanders just tweeted.
Becoming mayor because finally someone is going to lead with care, compassion, accessibility, and transparency and put people first.
My policies echo those of people like FDR and MLK, and to some people, that is scary.
I worked as a school nurse and saw that a lot of the challenges facing children in Buffalo public schools were rooted in concentrated poverty. That led me to becoming a community organizer and eventually executive director of a nonprofit where I built permanently affordable housing at an organization I co-founded called the Fruit Belt Community Land Trust. I couldn't let the current administration continue to lead our city unchallenged.
What would your priorities be as mayor?
Really tackling the issue of poverty. We are the third poorest city of our size in the nation, and that is the impetus of a lot of other issues, especially concerning community safety, quality of life, and social determinants of health. My administration is going to focus on planning at the neighborhood level, on developing affordable housing, on reimagining community safety, and getting to the root causes of violent crime in the city of Buffalo. I am so excited to have the support of Senator Sanders. My biggest takeaway from the Sanders mayoral time is the Burlington Community Land Trust. I started a land trust here in Buffalo, so we really look to Burlington as an example of how to create mixed income communities and prioritize affordable housing.
We won the primary because of you, with people power, and we are going to win the general election in November the exact same way.
That's what they're afraid of, chat. That's what they're afraid of. And know that these scumfuck MSNBC ghouls don't talk one iota of what the people of Buffalo need. Not one word about the poverty of Buffalo. Not one word about the failure of the Democratic Party to do a fucking thing for the Rust Belt and the people that are suffering. Not one fucking word. Just talk about how they can change the system so that they can win. Disgusting. We've only got a couple more days where we can prevent Republican control of Congress. It's starting to feel more real, isn't it? Let's keep going and mauling over MSNBC.
She has is that even the most left-wing Democrats, because they're Democrats, it's like they want legislation to pass. They want things to happen. And I think there's a certain lack of credibility in their threat to kind of blow things up entirely. But I mean, I do think that Democrats should pay attention to these electoral rules questions, right? If they don't want far-left candidates winning primaries, they should try to align these things to dates when larger groups of people are going to turn out. The rules make a big difference. They make a big difference to the outcomes. And, you know, leaders need to design a system that is going to produce results that they think works for them. And for sort of mainstream...
What? Leaders need to design rules that give outcomes that work for them. I can't say what I'm thinking, chat. I can't say what I'm thinking. I can't say what I'm thinking. I can't say what I'm thinking. It's not legal.
Democrats these days, I think that means high turnout in primaries.
So I find this fascinating. You know, for me, the fact that far left candidates are being elected is not necessarily a bad thing. I actually take issue with the description of them as far left necessarily, Matthew. But I wanted to ask you, Sasha, this question. Now, you know, that you see...
You have a question, Professor.
So do you see this as necessarily a problem, the way Matthew is representing it? Is this a problem with democracy? Does this require that the Democratic elite somehow fix the system in order for ideologically diverse folk not to be able to gain access to this? Why is this a problem when now you see basically progressives taking advantage of a system that was supposedly initially designed to benefit those who hold power?
I think it's actually pretty simple. The entire legitimacy of our political system is based off of people participating. And when very, very few people participate, that brings the legitimacy of the entire enterprise into question. So if you believe that more voting is good and generally higher turnout is better, period, full stop, from a good government perspective, we want elections that have as much participation as possible. We want people to show up and vote. And to me, it has less to do with ideology and more to do with making sure that the outcomes of our elections are genuinely representative of what people
Angry
want,
civilian, thanks for the
and
10
not what a
gifted subs.
tiny
Holy
sliver
shit,
of
thank
people
you.
who happen to know that
Very
the election
playback.
is on a particular day in a random months before November happen to want.
Yeah, and Eddie...
By the way, I agree with that, chat. I agree with that. Higher turnout is better. More Democratic legitimacy. Now, if only the Democrats would focus less on the Democratic primary and maybe the general election by passing H.R. 1. See, they want to have it both ways. Oh, we need to design the primaries in a way that the centrists win, but we also need to make sure that the system is rigged for the right in November. It's almost like they're just trying to rig everything for the right always. Weird.
It is, again, it's not just the left. Again, if I had my choice as the candidate I was as far as in 94 running against a bunch of establishment candidates, and I was the ideological, balance the budget in 5 years and, get rid of like 4 departments and everything else, I wanted the turnout to be as low as possible. I think the primary was in early September.
That's not even true with what these left-wing candidates. AOC's primary was higher turnout than the previous primaries. They were driving new people to the polls. And you know what happens, chat? You know what happens when you have higher turnout? You want to know what actually happens? It helps left-wing candidates. Here's a nice report. Does compulsory voting increase support for leftist policy? Here, let me see if I can actually get the full thing so you can read it. This is a study that I suggest everybody read. Is there a policy bias due to unequal political participation? Can compulsory voting alleviate the bias? Although this idea has attracted considerable attention in the literature, the potential gravity of the underlying problem is well known. We possess little systemic knowledge about the actual policy effects of compulsory voting. We argue that sanctioned compulsory voting increases support for leftist policies because it imposes the highest costs on citizens at the bottom of the income distribution, which tend to hold leftist policy preferences. We explore the empirical validity of this argument in the context of a direct democratic system where citizens directly vote on policy issues in referendums. Our results suggest that sanctioned compulsory voting increases turnout in federal referendums massively by about 30% percentage points on average. More importantly, we find that turnout increase has pronounced positive effect on support for leftist policy proposals. Electoral support for policy proposals endorsed by the Social Democratic Party doubles under compulsory voting. We also conduct a set of simulations to explore the magnitude of these effects in specific important referendums that lie at the heart of the left-right cleavage. We find that compulsory voting induces profound shifts in votes for leftist policy and stricter market regulation. So they don't really want turnout to go too high. They don't want turnout to go too high because whoops-a-daisy, that helps the left. We don't want that H.R. 1. We don't want universal vote by mail. We don't want automatic voter registration. We don't want, publicly financed elections supported by grassroots dollars. That's a problem.
Everybody was gone in August. That suited me fine because, again, I could knock on doors. I could get the most ideologically focused people to come out. And it was very easy for a candidate like myself, who Newt Gingrich said was too conservative to get elected.
By the way, I'll tell you what they're actually talking about. they know that if you don't have a lot of money, when you have these medium turnout elections, which is what they really want, the person with the most money can bombard the other side with mass media buys. If you have $5 million, people will know who your name is, and they'll vote for the person they recognize. And you could put out all these positive fluff piece ads about yourself, and you could attack your opponent's background, as opposed to actually contending with the message. Abominable Bro Man, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Appreciate that. They know deep down that there will be a money advantage.
Elected in my district, it was easy for me to win because, again, I was able to engage the most ideological. So it works on the right, it works on the left as well. And as Sasha says, it depends on whether you just want a handful of people deciding who's going to win elections or a larger group. But I don't know, Eddie, what do you think? I mean, sometimes people may want more ideologically driven candidates going to Congress.
No, I'm always committed to the idea of democracy as being robust. We want as many Americans voting as possible, but I'm also committed to the idea of blocking and tackling. As you know, Joe, the on-the-ground work of face-to-face contact with everyday ordinary folk. And we know that the system, as it's currently organized, was designed to benefit those who hold power. And now that you see folks who understand the system, who are leveraging it in order to bring forth a different kind of agenda, now folk are screaming that something's wrong with democracy as such. We all want democracy to work, but we need to understand that blocking and tackling, whether it's a lot of folk or a small number of folk, is at the heart of politics. That's what I think.
Hey, Casey, let me get you to talk about the impact of this on what you cover, which is Congress and the actual deal-making, the day-to-day legislative process. It's certainly, this is not the only...
Matty Yglesias, that cone-headed motherfucker who probably eats toilet paper in his free time, is an absolute vile ghoul and a piece of human filth. Fuck that piece of shit.
Turnout, these sort of primaries are not the only contributing factors, of course, to the increased partisanship, increased polarization. But if you end up with elected officials who represent more of the edges of their respective parties, doesn't it make it that much harder to meet in the middle, to find some sort of common ground?
What are you doing? I think you must have... I'm sorry. I'm trying not to be ableist, but there's some sort of lack of object permanence in this guy's brain. There is something physically wrong with his brain. Physically wrong with this guy's brain. Something is wrong with this guy's brain. Mitch McConnell is an old-time old boy from Kentucky, dude. He has been in this game for decades, and he says his goal is to 100% block the Biden administration. This has nothing to do with progressive leftists winning. What are you babbling about?
Create legislation to get a bill done. What's your sense of it as someone who's been covering the Capitol for a while? Has this trend only gotten worse, and how much of a role does this play?
I mean, I think it plays a significant role. I think Matt's point about the differences between the parties and the basic perspective does really contribute. A lot of the Republicans who come from the farther edges much more willing to just blow everything up and say, great, if the government doesn't function, that's perfectly fine with us, than a lot of these candidates on the left who actually, tend to believe that government is a good way to solve problems. But, what really happens when you have these kinds of candidates is that they don't necessarily have to answer to people to get reelected. And that honestly affects sometimes the quality of people who show up in Congress. Oftentimes, some of the most successful, hardworking members of Congress are those who come from swing districts and swing states. They have to get reelected regularly. They have to work on all fronts all the time. And they're also the ones that are most likely to get booted out of Congress. So it has implications for the talent that's available to our government in general. And I think that's one of the trends over the last 10 to 15 years that has been troubling in many ways. There are a lot of people who, as these kinds of people, especially on the right, have come in, it's gotten harder to govern. That's made it more frustrating for truly, really talented people who get elected in tough places to actually enjoy their jobs and feel like they're getting the rewards of the office that they hold and actually are able to accomplish something. And I think that's a trend that should worry all of us.
Yeah. Hey, Matt Yglesias, love your newsletter, by the way. It sounds like your prediction is, your belief is that there will, in fact, be a deal done, a bipartisan.
Progressives win in swing states. Progressives win in swing states and swing seats constantly. Matt Cartwright, Susan Wild in Pennsylvania, Katie Porter in California, and there's lists and lists and lists and lists of these people. It's just made up. It's just a lie. They just say it. They just say this babbling bullshit constantly, and it has no relation to reality, and it doesn't matter.
Deal done, and that Nancy Pelosi and more progressive members of the Democratic Party won't undermine that, right?
I mean, I think that's right. But obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty. We've had a lot of twists and turns in this bill. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's not, I think, credible for the left to say that they're going to blow up this bipartisan deal. People say, well, it doesn't have enough climate provisions in it. And I mean, I agree, it's not going to solve climate change. But this is a big investment in mass transit. It's a big investment in passenger and freight rail. It's a big investment in the electrical grid. It does important things with the water network. These are things that progressives support. So the idea that they're going to torpedo it as a kind of bank shot way to gain leverage over Joe Manchin, it doesn't really make sense.
It absolutely makes sense. If Joe Manchin wants those things to happen too, he's got to give in on things that are also good. And here's the problem. I think Maddie has a good point here. There's no credibility for the progressives. So you know what that means? Time to build some. Vote it down, baby.
I think the president knows he made a mistake by tilting a little too far in the direction of things Nancy Pelosi is saying to manage her own caucus. He's trying to right the ship, but it comes down to the Republicans, right? If they decide that they would rather embarrass the president than move forward with bipartisan legislation, they have the power to do that. We saw during the Obama years over and over again, Republicans they didn't want to cooperate because it makes the incumbent president look good. And that's an inherent problem with the bipartisan approach.
All right, Matt.
He literally just refuted everything he's been saying at the end, which was what? Republicans don't want the president to look good. That's their only effect. That's their only interest.
Thank you, Yglesias and Sasha Samitin. Thank you both very much for being on this morning. And results from the Biden...
Oh my God, I've got to lose my fucking mind, dude. I'm gonna lose my mind, man. These rats, man, these fucking rats. We do politics here every morning starting at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. You can watch us here on Twitch. We're the morning guy, the morning politics guy, Politics Frogs in every single day, same time, 10 a.m., day in, day out, and we carry you through your morning and early afternoon politics needs. And if you need more, Mike from PA, we have a YouTube channel. We talked about suburbs, the My Pillow guy, Ted Cruz. We talked about DSA. Amazing. Making fun of Tim Pool. Amazing. Look at all of these amazing videos. Get in there, watch them. We have me on Twitter. You got to follow me on Twitter, chat. I'm at 20,614 subs. That means I got like 40 followers on Twitter in the last day. You can do better than that. You can do better than that. Go follow us on Twitter. And of course, join the Discord, where we have an incredible community of left-wing streamers. We have left-wing community. We talk about the stream. We talk about politics. There's gaming content. It's a really awesome supportive place, direct action, mutual aid, and you can just let off some steam. And also, you can help produce the show. One of the things I do is I look at the links that are put into the news content suggestions chat room on the Discord. Join the Discord, come hang out, and maybe what you want me to talk about will be part of the next show.